Hello and welcome once again everyone. Today's video features the brand new Tier 10 American battleship, USS Vermont. It seems to have taken ages for this ship to be released. Finally, USS Vermont is finished and out of NDA. The USS Kansas and Minnesota have been in early access now for quite a while, and have given us a taste of what is to come with the Vermont, and in my honest opinion, she does not disappoint. Whereas I found the Kansas and Minnesota to be quite a lot of hard work, and felt very anemic in many situations, and generally not that much fun to play, the Vermont I found was surprisingly good. The main factor behind this is the big upgrade with the main battery guns, 12 457mm monsters. I found I was hitting targets, and these guns were definitely leaving their mark, and suddenly I felt less distracted by the slowish reload times and ship speed, and had rediscovered the joy of blowing stuff up. Before diving deeper into the full review, let me put up on screen the exact build I'm using in this footage to give you a better understanding of how Vermont is capable of performing. This is my recommended build, but by no means are you just limited to this setup. There is a bit of flexibility here, but for the sake of this review guide, all the numbers quoted in this video are based on this exact build. As you can see, I've gone for the reload module, which does bring the reload time down to just over 35 seconds, and I've opted out of an extreme long range setup, but I do urge you to experiment and find the balance suits your own playstyle best. I'm positioning myself stern angled towards the main battleship threats, making myself quite difficult to contend with, and there are a couple of factors here for doing so. Should we get overrun at this capture point, I can simply hit the gas and start kiting away, without having to make any potential dangerous broadside turns. The primary reason, however, is down to the armor layout of the Vermont. Using a simple port screenshot of the Vermont's armor, we can see a very strong aft end armor belt of 292mm. So this position of being angled stern towards the enemy presents a very strong armor profile towards the enemy threats, allowing Vermont to tank damage quite effectively, especially at long range. Vermont is quite a large battleship, roughly the same size as the Montana, so you will take a lot of incoming fire, but the Vermont's armor scheme as a whole stands up pretty well. Vermont gets 32mm of protection on the complete upper and lower bow, including the upper aft end sections. Main casemate armor is made up of a main belt which follows a spaced armor scheme, with the upper part being 406mm thick and the lower part under the waterline, which is 318mm. Upper casemate armor is 38mm, leading up to the main deck, which has 51mm of protection, which is quite important. 51mm of main deck protection will prevent quite a bit of high explosive penetration damage, but not all. The likes of the Hindenburg, Goliath, to mention a few, will still be able to penetrate this deck armor with high explosive, so range is definitely your friend. The superstructure gets the usual 19mm, while the main gun turrets get very good protection with a frontal plate of 508mm, a side plating 305mm, a top plating of 254, and finally a rear plating of 356mm. These turrets feel very well protected, and I've found rarely got knocked out or disabled during the whole testing process. All combined a solid armour foundation on which to build strong survivability. Vermont gets 102,800 hit points, putting it at the high-end range, only just marginally behind the Kremlin and Grosse Kurfürst, which is quite significant considering these two mentioned are generally more suitable to a brawling role, while Vermont simply feels more comfortable at range, raining down carnage from afar. Throw into the mix a grand total of 5 repair parties when using the captain skill Superintendent, each capable of repairing a max of 415 hit points per second for 28 seconds, and a very strong torpedo protection damage reduction of 40%, which is also at the high end compared to other Tier 10 battleships. So Vermont does feel quite chunky. When angled and positioned well, Vermont does feel capable of tanking quite a bit of damage at range over the course of a game. Being able to deal with incoming damage is only a start to being a solid battleship, however. Where Vermont really starts to feel strong is her ability to dish out the pain. I must admit to have been quite pleasantly surprised. Not that I was delivering many devastating salvos, it felt much more like very reliable damage over the course of games. Thinking to myself at the end of games, quite a bit, did that really all add up to that? The answer here lies quite simply with the main battery gun caliber improvement from the Tier 9 Minnesota's 406mm to the Vermont's formidable 457mm guns, 12 in total, arranged in a 4x3 layout with both 2 fore and 2 aft, and in this preferred stern angled towards the target position has very comfortable firing angles. With this exact build shown earlier, Vermont's main battery guns have a reload time of 35.2 seconds and a max firing range of 24.5 kilometers. If you use the spotter plane consumable, you can increase this out to just under 30 kilometers. These turrets have an 180-degree turning time of 38.3 seconds and a max dispersion of 305 meters. This max dispersion can be reduced further by using the decreased dispersion mod in slot 6, but at the cost of 5 seconds reload speed. On the whole, I found this very hard to live with, so I do highly recommend using the reload module. Keeping these 12 457mm guns firing as often as possible is key to having fun in the Vermont, something which felt quite difficult with previous tiers. When you start seeing yourself with your own eyes, the damage numbers start racking up. You'll quickly get the picture and understand that Vermont has all the capability to be a real damage monster. Vermont's armor-piercing shells can inflict a max damage of 15,750 with a shell velocity of 732 meters per second. This damage is quite impressive, considering the Kremlin with the same gun caliber 457s has a max potential damage of 14,500, which amounts to a 1250 damage increase per shell. When forced to deal with well-angled, heavily armoured targets, Vermont's high explosive rounds are quite effective, capable of dealing a max damage of 6,450, which strangely enough is 50 less than the Kremlin's high explosive. These HE rounds can penetrate 77mm of armour and have a base fire chance of 43%, with a faster shell velocity of 800 meters per second. I keep coming back to the word formidable to describe these guns, and I'm quite sure in the hands of a more competent battleship player than myself, we will see players rack up some incredible damage numbers with the Vermont. When it comes to the Vermont's secondary armament, the base firing range is not at all bad at 6 kilometers. Vermont is armed with 16 127mm guns in 8 dual turrets, firing high explosive rounds with a max damage of 1800. A base 5% fire chance, capable of penetrating 21mm of armour, with a shell velocity of 792 meters per second. For those brave souls willing to try a secondary build, I urge you to reconsider. Even though the base firing range of 6 kilometers isn't bad and can be increased out to just over 9 kilometers with modules, captain skills and signal flag. The skills required to make such a build work are simply beyond my capabilities. Vermont gets an AA rating of 91, with a massive 172 AA guns total, ranging from 20mm right up to 127mm, all combined pumping out a continuous average damage 448. The short and medium range numbers being by far the best. Vermont's AA guns fire 6 black explosions per salvo, capable of a max damage of 1680, the action zone of which is between 3.5 to 5.8 kilometers, which is the max firing range. This is further boosted by having access to the American Defensive Fire consumable, which can boost the continuous damage by 50% and the damage from black explosions by 300%, with a 40-second action time. If an attacking aircraft carrier makes a mistake and hits these flak bubbles, you'll very quickly see his planes hitting the water around you. With the current high population of high-tier CVs in the game, I was even running with the fighter consumable for added deterrence, because being the new kid on the block, you can expect some not-so-loving attention from enemy carriers, willing to test their planes on your defences. I found keeping the fighter for when the defensive AA fire was on cooldown did work quite well in delaying the inevitable for as long as possible. When it comes to Vermont's manoeuvrability, she does play very similar to previous tiers, having a base speed of 23 knots, which can be increased to 24.2 knots when mounting the Sierra Mike signal flag. Vermont gets a turning circle radius of 850 meters and a rudder shift time of 19.1 seconds. Nothing spectacular to be sure, but the major difference is this no longer feels a bit irritating. Sure, you still have to be careful with your positioning and be proactive in relocating when need be, but the sheer fact your guns now feel effective, I no longer found slow speed as a distraction. Playing through the Kansas and Minnesota had numbed my mind to the playstyle, resulting in lowering my expectations for the Vermont. Having the ability to blap stuff and rack up some big damage, well, it simply felt invigorating and fun. It's not a playstyle for everyone, of course, but there is fun to be had with the Vermont, and this was the real pleasant surprise for me, as I had really struggled with the likes of Kansas and Minnesota. So finally, stats-wise, we come to the Vermont's concealment. Using both the Concealment Upgrade and Concealment Expert, one can reduce the detectability range down to 14.2 kilometers. Vermont, as I stated earlier, is not a small ship, as is reflected in her concealment, which again plays more into a long-range kind of playstyle. Being able to drop detection in between main battery salvos is also a very efficient way to deal with incoming fire, just because it's simply much harder to hit what you can't see. It also helps quite a bit with your situational awareness, giving you the time to read enemy movements and predict what and where their intentions lie. Vermont can be detected from the air at 12.4 kilometers, so when CVs abound, expect to be detected quite a bit. I had lost a little bit of faith in this line, I am to be brutally honest, but for those of you grinding your way through Kansas and Minnesota, I do assure you there is light and, more importantly, fun at the end of the tunnel. I stream on Twitch 4 times a week. Feel free to come on over and say hi at any time. If you liked this video and found it helpful, make sure to hit the thumbs up and bell icons below and sub to the channel. It really helps me out a lot. So thank you all in advance, and until the next time. I'd like to thank you once again all for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more. Take a moment to check out some of my most recent videos and leave a comment below. And until the next time, keep sailing it like you stole it.